Why does it happen to you that the relationship dies off? That her attraction in you slowly disappears? That she loses interest in you? That you lose interest in her? That the attraction leaves over time? People are getting into relationships and for 6 months, and then initial attraction and spark of newness leaves the relationship and one of the two gets hurt. They want to find someone else to get that new rush of dopamine and newness and novelty to repeat the process. So this very common pattern creates a lot of suffering potentially for you right now. It comes from one specific thing that isn't talked about at all, and definitely not in this masculinity space on YouTube. If you're interested in love and in relationships, then this is probably the most important video that I will release on this channel. What's up, man? Good to see you again. Always glad to have you. It's another beautiful day here in Lisbon, Portugal, and I hope it's the same for you wherever you are. Your time is extremely valuable, so let's get into it. When you meet someone or when you're in a relationship, as you fall in love with someone, there is two things happening. One of them is actual love, which is caring about the other person regardless of your self-interest. But then there's a second part, which in most people's lives is taking over the relationship completely. And it's attachment. Actual love is related to the real you. Attachment is related to your ego. So when you just went on a date and it was amazing, and you were texting her, hey, how are you doing? You don't really care about how she's doing. What you want is to hear that she also had a good time. You want to know when you will be seeing her again. Your ego wants to be validated so it can relax. Right? In the moment you send that text and you're waiting for her reply, your ego is contracting because you don't know, did she have a good time? Does she want to see me again? Am I good enough, basically? And then she sends that text and she says, I had a wonderful time as well. I want to see you again. And that ego relaxes. And it is this mechanism that continues throughout the dating process into the relationship. As you continue to date her and you decide you want to make her yours and you get into a relationship, then what this attachment wants is to remove all the uncertainties and space that is between you two in order to have your ego relaxed. So before you met this person, your ego was contracting because you wanted to find someone. And then you find that person and then your ego again starts contracting because you want to hold on to that person. And you want to be sure that she doesn't cheat on you, that she won't leave you, that it is forever and ever. But that very response of attachment, to remove that uncertainty, to remove the space between you, to start living together, to lock her in for life, to hear validation from her every day, to have her text you every hour, right? This symbolically, this kind of urge to put her in a box so that no one can touch her and she is all yours. But what happens if we follow that mechanism? We slowly remove the space that was there in the beginning that created this novelty and attraction, and we remove that space until your lives are merged and you live together, you do everything together. There is absolute safety, there is 100% familiarity. She has told you, no, I won't cheat, I promise you, and all this. And now slowly the space that was there in the beginning that allowed the oxygen for the attraction to be there has completely disappeared. Her ability to be attracted to you decreases and vice versa. And the person who loses this attraction first and doesn't understand all of this will start looking elsewhere. And this is where the suffering begins. This is where people cheat. This is where people suddenly leave you. This is where beautiful relationships die off. There's a paradox going on here between space and distance, because actual love needs space and attachment wants to close that space. So in Dzogchen, Buddhist spirituality, this is called a contraproductive response, because your ego has an urge for attachment, but then love and attraction cannot live anymore. So how the fuck do we navigate this? I'll tell you first how the Red Pill and all these other channels that are very popular, Fresh and Fit, this corner, they see this mechanism, they don't quite understand it, and they say you have to play certain games, you have to do certain things, you have to avoid saying certain things, that you uphold a certain mystery about yourself and manually create this distance in your advantage. so that you have her running behind you all the time. This is extremely shallow and empty because it is based in that same fear of losing her. You're just playing the outer surface. This isn't about love at all. You sometimes just don't text her for a day, or you play all these games that create insecurity for her, and you got her running like a dog behind you. Well, I don't know what type of man you are, but that sounds very unempowering and very meaningless to me. So what I'm interested in, how to deal with it authentically based on truth. The authentic, loving way to go about it that allows love to continue, that allows attraction to build even after years being together, to have your sex life, the connection, grow over time, requires you to do one very tough thing, and that is to allow space. You need to have your own life, especially throughout the dating phase. You want to just put her on number one and text her before getting your work done and going to her instead of going to see your friends. Putting your purpose and whatever you're building on number one, to see her as the most beautiful supplement to your life, and eventually someone that deserves to receive everything that you are and to share your life with. Your ego and your need for attachment and validation is going to trigger you, is going to persuade you to close that distance more and more and more, right? Living together, involving her in your business, doing all these things that just completely remove the space in which you allowed yourself to love each other. You need to be wary of that. You need to be at least 50% of your time doing your own things. And the same goes for her. Start honoring those feelings of uncertainty or distance as just something that little kid inside you, which is your ego, it's just a little kid screaming for love and validation. Start honoring that and just letting these emotions be there, right? When you feel these emotions, say to yourself, that's fine, I allow it. Instead of doing something with it, instead of sending that second text, instead of saying to her, you cannot cheat, and if you do, when we talk about cheating, for example, what I always like to say is, you can cheat. You can sleep with other men. That doesn't mean that I'll stay with you or that I feel you still deserve what I am. There is no need to create all these rules and mechanics to close that distance. She is another person. She has her own life, and you can be fully loving together in a monogamous relationship without formulating all these rules and things. So it all comes down to this, the spiritual truth that there is a difference between love and attachment, and that your ego, attachment, wants to eliminate the space, and that love requires space. This counterproductive relationship between the two. The conventional masculinity corner on YouTube, there's the interpretation mostly of making sure that she is somewhat insecure, doubtful, has questions about you, feels mysterious about you, so that she doesn't think of cheating, right? So that you have this advantage of having her attached to you more than you are to her. In my opinion, it's just not the way to go. I think that you will sooner or later walk into a wall if you choose that path. That method can be explained by having a relationship where you put your bird, being your woman, in a cage. And so she cannot fly away. She cannot choose to visit other places and fly away and come back to you. And so the love cannot breathe and you cannot experience the full depth of love. Versus the route that I prescribe to you, which is opening the cage and letting her fly away, saying you can cheat, but that doesn't mean that I will stay with you. That's not a threat. That is loving yourself. So really from a genuine place, opening that cage and saying, you can go out into the world, and as long as you choose to fly back to me, as I fly back to you, then we'll experience this space where I can see her flourish and she can see me flourish. And we don't hold this thing in clenched fists anymore. We allow the space to be there and choose each other. You'll still be in a loving, monogamous relationship without infidelity and all this toxic shit, because there's the space for actual love. Guys, I know this is a more spiritual approach, Buddhist spirituality, and I'm really curious whether you guys like going to this depth. So please leave a comment if you think that this video is helpful or valuable in any kind of way. And if you're struggling in love, right now, hit us up in the comments. In my perception, the men that are subscribed to this channel are very mature and respectful, and I'm really happy about the community that we're creating here. So completely see it as a safe space to share whatever you want. And for now, that's it, man. See you in the next one.